Hello there, people of YouTube. I am Ariel Katombela and welcome to my YouTube channel. For many Christians, spending time with God is a huge struggle. It's a source of condemnation, but we know that it is essential to our faith. If you ask anyone what area they would like to grow more in their faith, it would be spending time with God. In this video, I'll share some ideas, both belief adjustments and practical steps that have helped me in this journey of truly having a wholesome time in the presence of God. So stay tuned. I'll divide these ideas into two sections. Firstly, beliefs, and secondly, the practical steps. The first one, when it comes to belief, is letting go of the belief that you need to strive in the presence of God. Recently, I've been struggling a little bit with just being still in God's presence, and one day I decided to fast and pray, and I was just there feeling super condemned about how that time did not feel fruitful. So I fasted, I ended the day, and I just felt super disappointed. I also felt that God was disappointed in me. On the same day, when I went to bed at night, I was feeling super tired, exhausted, and very disappointed in the fact that I had not yielded the results that I thought I would. As I was falling asleep, I began to feel the peace of God come over me. I was motivated to get up and pick up my Bible, and in that moment I had a quote-unquote quiet time. When I was praying and asked God, Lord, why at this time? I felt that God responded in, this is the only time He finds me in the posture of surrender. I realized that I had so many ideas of what God expected of me that were not true. I just kept striving and striving in God's presence, and it did not yield good results. Instead, when we spend time with God, it's important to just let go. Allow Him to lead that time, and remember that His posture towards you is grace. Remember that there's grace for your shortcomings, there's grace for your distractions, there's grace for your sinful thoughts, even grace for your boredom when you sit there and are unable to pay attention. What is important is that you should give these things to God. Don't try and control it in those moments. Rather, surrender them to God. Give them as part of your offering and say, God, this is where I am. Be honest, and believe me, He will meet you there. The second point is be expectant, but limit your expectations. And the difference between these things is the one, being expectant means I believe that during this time, God will do something meaningful. Having expectations looks like I know that God will do something meaningful in these ways. In doing the latter, you place limitations on how you expect God to move. And when you do actually encounter God in ways that you wouldn't really think, you miss it and you don't see the value in it. It's important to not place limitations on how God will speak. One thing I've been guilty of is always expecting fireworks in these moments that I spend time with God. But one of the ways that God does speak is in the mundane. It's in the day-to-day, the plodding along, learning to be with Him and abide in His presence. Spending time with God and being in His presence in itself is a supernatural phenomenon. Even if you don't get goosebumps or tingles or major revelation, this moment with God, the moment that you've intentionally carved out to be in His presence, is important, and it is divine. Just like any other relationship, we get to know each other day by day in the moments that we commit to really getting to know someone. And this is similar with God. When we take time to sit aside and hear His voice, and when we pour out our hearts to Him, whether or not there are fireworks, we know that He is there and He is speaking and He is transforming our lives. We need to realize that when we spend time with God, we are doing exactly what we're created to do, to be in relationship with our Creator and with our first love. Thirdly, in adjusting our beliefs, we need to believe that we are there by invitation. One of the things I've personally struggled with is feeling like I have to conjure up the presence of God, like I have to somehow convince Him to meet me where I am. Realizing that we are there by invitation releases us of that pressure. In our relationship and desire to be with Him, we need to know that it is because He pursued us, not because we convinced Him. So even in moments when we get to spend time with God, we have to realize that we're not sitting there trying to convince Him to come, but that He is there. He had pursued us and placed in our hearts the desire to be with Him. So let go of that pressure of trying to make God want to be with you, because you need to realize that He already is. A verse that backs this up is Hebrews 4 verse 16. So let us come boldly to the throne of our gracious God. There we will receive His mercy and will find grace to help us when we need it most. When it comes to actions, these 3 steps have really helped me as well. Firstly, to give God your best time. I have given into the pressure of thinking that I need to have some kind of morning routine with a coffee and a Bible and a pretty notebook that I can scribble in. And every time I try and put these rituals together in order to spend time with God, I struggle because I feel like I don't focus on Him. Giving God your best time means carving out time in your day when you know you are able to give your full attention. If you're a morning person, absolutely do the coffee thing, do the Bible thing, do the notebook thing. But if you're not, it's okay to do it in the evening. If you're not an evening person either, it's okay to do it during your lunchtime. Carve out the amount of time that you know that you're able to focus and truly give to God. The second point is be intentional. Some examples of this is preparing the Bible verse that you will be studying or reading during that sit-in or during that week. How do you actually pick this out? Pay attention to the things that God has been speaking to you about. For example, if you have been confronted a lot with your issues of unforgiveness during the week, that is usually the Holy Spirit trying to show you something. Look for scripture that speak into these things and begin to study it. Realize that God showed you this for a reason and He has the intention of working on you. Also be intentional about where you're doing your quiet times. Find a place where you won't be distracted. This is so important. I love being outdoors, and sometimes I think because it's pretty out there, I will focus, but that's not the case. I get very distracted by birds, I get distracted by the noises. So I always find that it's better for me to sit inside where I'm not distracted, but where I can focus on what I'm doing. Lastly, I want to point out that this means be intentional, but not rigid. Being intentional means positioning yourself well, but being rigid is not even allowing God space to speak back. And sometimes we just get there with our agendas and tell God what we're thinking, what we're doing. So being rigid is trying to fill every single gap instead of giving yourself time to be quiet and just be still. The third point in the actionable steps is building an altar. Now I'm getting this from Joshua 4 verse 21. This is the time when the Israelites were about to step into the promised land. Between them and the promised land was the Jordan River. And just like the time when they had left Egypt, God was about to do a miracle. Just like He parted the Red Sea, He parted the Jordan River so that they go across. But when they got to the end of the Jordan River, He gave them an instruction to build an altar. Joshua 4 verse 21 says, "Then Joshua said to the Israelites, 'In the future your children will ask, what do these stones mean? Then you can tell them, this is where the Israelites crossed the Jordan on dry ground. For the Lord your God dried up the river right before their eyes. And He kept it dry until you were all across, just as He did at the Red Sea when He dried it up until we had all crossed over. He did this so that all the nations of the earth might know that the Lord's hand is powerful, and so that you might fear the Lord your God forever.'" This point highlights the importance of documenting your time with God. I have been one of those people where I'll go around the same mountain over and over because God would speak about an issue and I wouldn't do anything about it. I wouldn't put it down, I wouldn't write it, I wouldn't voice record it. And I just missed opportunities to really show the testament of God's goodness in my life. So it's important that when you hear God's voice, when you have revelation, write it down so that one day you can remind yourself of how good He's been to you. So in closing, I want this to be a reminder to you and to me that spending time with God is an absolute gift and a privilege. Christ's death and resurrection has given us the amazing privilege of boldly approaching the throne of God. In those spaces, we don't only get to know about Him, we get to truly know Him. The reality is we spend time with God because we need to, and also because we get to. Psalm 27 verse 4 says this, "One thing I'll ask from the Lord, and this only thing I seek, that I may dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life, to gaze on the beauty of the Lord and seek Him in His temple." How beautiful it would be to get to this place when we just want to be before God, when we realize that this is what we're created for, not just to ask Him for things, but to truly just want to be with Him. We also spend time with Him because His presence transforms us and equips us to be who He's called us to be. John 15, 4-5 says this, "Remain in me as I also remain in you. No branch can bear fruit by itself. It must remain in the vine. Neither can you bear fruit unless you remain in me. I am the vine and you're the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing." This is a beautiful invitation from Christ to be with Him, to be in His presence. But also there's a promise that in that space we are transformed. In that space we're able to do what He's called us to be and be who He wants us to be. There's even the reality that apart from Him we can do nothing. It's only in abiding in Him and dwelling in Him that we can produce the fruits that He calls us to produce. I know putting these ideas together were really, really helpful to me, so I really hope it is helpful to you too. If you have any ideas or questions, don't forget to pop them in the comment section. And if you haven't done so yet, like this video, and subscribe to this channel. God bless you and see you soon.